Ah, Christopher Pike, the one who started it all, the first captain of the Enterprise. That's if we don't count Robert April. The first one on screen. Well, that's if we don't count the fact that The Cage wasn't actually aired for quite a few years after it was made. Listen, that's not important right now because these are all things we might discuss in this article. With that in mind, I'm Sean Ferrick for Trek Culture, and here are 10 things you didn't know about Captain Pike. Number 10. His horses. In A Quality of Mercy, the finale of the first season of Strange New Worlds, Pike encountered his future self, who came to warn Pike not to prevent the injury that left him paralysed and disfigured, in order to protect the future of the Federation. To convince Pike that he was telling the truth, his counterpart told him about how their first horse, the creatively named Sir Nazelot, broke his leg in a rainstorm and had to be put down when Pike was a child. Pike was heartbroken and cried for a week over his loss but never told anyone, explaining that it's hard to give a tragic backstory with such a silly name. Earlier, we also saw Pike riding one of his horses in the snow near the start of the first episode. Something that you may not have noticed is that Pike's love of horses was actually a small callback to The Cage. When the Telosians were trying to get him to fall in love with Vina, they created an illusion of Pike's old home in Mojave, complete with his two beloved horses, Tango and Mary Lou. Number 9. His medal. Pike was such an important figure in Starfleet's history that one of their most impressive medals was named after him, the Christopher Pike Medal of Valor. The medal was granted to officers to recognise remarkable leadership, meritorious conduct, and acts of personal bravery. Admiral Ross awarded this medal to Captain Sisko in the DS9 episode Tears of the Prophets for retaking the station and fighting back against the Dominion. Several episodes later, in Take Me Out to the Holosuite, the Vulcan Captain Solok bragged to Sisko that he had just received his second Christopher Pike medal. The medal featured an image of Pike's face and a ribbon in the original series red, yellow and blue colour scheme, but unfortunately we didn't get a good shot of it in the show. Still, it's cool that Pike was still being recognised for his service well into the 24th century. Number 8. His days in security. After working as a test pilot straight out of the academy, Pike had a brief career as a security officer. Near the beginning of the Strange New Worlds episode Children of the Comet, Captain Pike told his senior staff a story of one of his most embarrassing moments as a security officer. Apparently, Pike, still an ensign at the time, got into an altercation with a Nausicaan. Somehow, during the fight, the Nausicaan ended up pantsless, and the young ensign Pike ran after him, phaser in hand, only to trip and get caught on the Nausicaan's discarded pants, allowing him to get away. After the mishap, Pike's lieutenant pulled him aside and told him that security may not be the best fit for him. In the scene, he never mentioned whether or not he took his lieutenant's advice. It's possible that Pike learned from this experience and remained in security for years before serving as Robert April's first officer aboard the Enterprise. Number 7. Vina's Pike illusion. The story of The Cage was retold almost exactly in the two-parter The Menagerie, but there was one detail that was changed, causing a bit of confusion among fans until recently. At the end of The Cage, there was a scene of Vina and Pike running off together and holding hands. In that episode, the Pike in that scene was meant to be an illusion of Pike, created by the Telosians to keep Vina company after Pike and the Enterprise left. In The Menagerie, the same scene was used to show the real Pike running off with Vina, his injuries cured by the Telosians' illusions. In the Discovery episode If Memory Serves, in between The Cage and The Menagerie, Vina used the Telosians' powers to speak to Pike again and finally cleared up some of the confusion about what happened to the illusory Pike. She explained to him that the Telosians allowed her to live a lifetime with the illusory Pike, created from the part of him that lived on inside her mind, and told him how her relationship with this reconstruction helped her stay sane and tethered to what she once felt. Despite this, she always knew that he wasn't real, but the illusion of him was enough to fight her loneliness until he returned in The Menagerie. Number 6. The alternate Pike's differences. The version of Pike from the alternate Kelvin universe led the exact same life as the Prime Pike until the two timelines were split by the arrival of the Narada and the destruction of the USS Kelvin. This happened in 2233, around the time that he graduated from the Academy. Because of the divergence, the alternate Pike wasn't paralysed by delta radiation, though he was confined to a wheelchair at the end of the 2009 film because of his torture at the hands of Nero. In the next film, Into Darkness, he's still recovering from these injuries, but is able to walk again with the help of a cane. The alternate Pike was killed in Khan's attack on the Daystrom conference room, never getting the chance to return to Vina on Talos 4. In fact, it's possible that Vina and the rest of the crew of the SS Columbia never crashed on Talos 4 either, given that the crash happened in 2236 in the Prime timeline, 3 years after the timelines diverged. Number 5. Why he missed the Klingon War. When the Klingon War first began in 2256, 2 years after the Cage, Pike was leading one of the Enterprise's 5-year-long deep space exploration missions. During the war, Starfleet ordered the Enterprise crew to continue their mission, which Pike was not too pleased about. He and the rest of the crew wanted to help defend the Federation, but Command chose to keep them away to use as a last resort. They didn't want to risk losing some of their most talented officers until they had no choice, but Discovery was fortunately able to end the conflict before the Enterprise needed to get involved. The Enterprise was also pretty far from Federation space at the time, seeing as the point of their 5-year mission was to chart unexplored space. Even if they were ordered to help fight in the war, their journey would take months, if not a year. Number 4. Meeting Kirk. Kirk and Pike were probably never particularly close. In fact, Kirk wasn't even aware of Pike's delta radiation poisoning until he met the man again in the menagerie. Near the beginning of that episode, Kirk mentioned that the first time he met Pike was when he's promoted to fleet captain, a small detail that could give us an insight into the second season of Strange New Worlds. It's already been announced that Jim Kirk will become a recurring character in the second season. An alternate reality version of him already popped up in the season 1 finale, Quality of Mercy, but there's no canon issues since this future never technically happened. However, continuity problems arise if Pike isn't promoted to fleet captain before meeting the Prime Kirk in season 2. If Kirk's remark from the menagerie was canon, then season 2 would show the promotion of Pike to the rank of fleet captain before meeting Kirk, which may mean we'll get to see him command an entire fleet of starships on some large-scale mission. Number 3. The 4 Pikes. In The Cage, and in the reused footage in the menagerie, Captain Pike was portrayed by Jeffrey Hunter. After the series was rejected, Hunter moved on to other projects, and by the time the writers decided to bring Pike back, Hunter declined, and Sean Kenny was brought in to portray the disfigured and retired Pike. Kenny already looked strikingly similar to Hunter, and his heavy makeup was used to cover any noticeable differences. Decades later, we got to see an alternate version of Pike in the rebooted Kelvin timeline, portrayed by Bruce Greenwood. This version was able to avoid his fate from the Prime timeline, but ended up dying anyway way sooner at the hands of Khan, as we discussed earlier. Lastly, Anson Mount joins the cast of Discovery's second season as the Prime Captain Pike in between the episodes The Cage and the Menagerie. Mount turned Pike into one of Starfleet's kindest and most compassionate officers, a welcome change from Captain Lorca from season 1. Immediately after taking command of Discovery, Pike made it clear that he was a different kind of leader by cracking jokes with the senior staff and learning all of their names. The fans loved Mount's Pike and the other returning characters from The Cage, and it was actually one of the main reasons why Strange New Worlds was greenlit. Number 2. The Military Pike Code. In an interview with StarTrek.com, Sean Kenny, who played the wheelchair-bound Pike in the Menagerie, was asked about his experiences meeting the fans when he dropped a really interesting fun fact about Pike's legacy in the real world. According to Kenny, a couple of F-16 military pilots once told him that they had a secret Captain Pike code that they used when flying over Iraq. They explained, "All we say is that a 1-beep or a 2-beep Roger?" A question that only a real Trekkie would know how to answer. It's really amazing that Kenny's portrayal of Pike was able to become so iconic, despite not having any lines of dialogue in the entire episode he appeared in. It's not known how widely used this Captain Pike code was in the US military, but it's fascinating that it was used at all. Number 1. Pike's Discovery Pin. Most of Star Trek Discovery's second season was classified by Starfleet Command after the crew travelled to the future to prevent the destruction of the Federation. Because of this, Pike was rarely given a chance to remember the friends he made while briefly commanding Discovery. One way that he kept the knowledge of Discovery's crew alive was by wearing a pin dedicated to them on Starfleet Remembrance Day in the Strange New Worlds episode Memento Mori. The official report stated that Discovery was destroyed along with its entire crew. While Pike was aware that they probably continued to live on in the future, he was ordered to never disclose the true story, so this pin was his only way of paying his respects to Discovery publicly. Interestingly, every character in this episode wore a remembrance pin for a different ship. Spock's was dedicated to the USS Congo, Chief Kyle's honoured the USS Shenzhou, and La'an's pin named the SS Puget Sound, the ship that she was aboard as a child when the Gorn killed her family. That's everything for our list today, folks. If you think we missed anything, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget you can get in touch with us over on Twitter at TrekCulture or over on Instagram at TrekCultureYT. You can catch myself at Sean Ferrick on Twitter or at Sean.Ferrick88 on Instagram or at Sean Ferrick on Hive. Thank you very much, everyone. You are all awesome. Make sure that you look after yourselves until I'm talking to you again. Make sure you live long and prosper. Have a wonderful day and make it so.